Welcome back, everyone, to the Calm Mind Podcast. My name is Birdkeepertoby, joined, as always, by the lovely True Green 7. We had an intense week last week. We had a big discussion last week. How you feeling about that now, Ron?
How am I feeling about the discussion, or how am I feeling in general after the discussion?
Yeah, I guess both.
After the discussion, that was a week ago, so I literally don't care. I'm not ruminating over it. And that's proof, again, for the viewers, that anything deep or intense that we talk about, we're just back to just talking to each other normally like friends. Yes. After the podcast. That's not a problem. I want things to get heated on the podcast. That way, it's just more fun. And then when we're done, we just go back to just talking like normal people. About the situation, I think my position was already clear. So again, I would only ruminate about it if I think, my position wasn't clear enough and I embarrassed myself or something. So
yeah, I had the same thing. I had the exact same thing where my worry was clarity. That's what I was ruminating on. I wasn't ruminating on the fact that we had a back and forth. That's fine. What I was ruminating on was was I clear? Will people in the comment section get what I was saying? And by the way, by the time when we're filming this podcast, that episode's not out, so I haven't read your comments yet, but I'm really looking forward to reading those as well. But I thought it was a good discussion. I thought it was a really interesting discussion. I had that discussion with a few more people in the week afterwards.
Oh, really?
I thought it went really, yeah. And I mean, not to bring back up the whole last discussion, but it definitely led to some new avenues and some new ways of thinking. So that was interesting at the least.
And if for some reason this is your first episode, or you just skipped the last episode, you go watch the last episode. I'm not going to start
it was a good episode.
Conversation again. Yeah, it was really good.
I thought last week went really well in terms of we were just bouncing off each other, and I've come armed with many topics as well for this week. But you had something at the end of last week, right, that you wanted to talk about specifically.
Yeah. Well, I asked you whether or not, as a person who doesn't have any social anxiety, who's very extroverted, loves being around people, when you are socially anxious, let's say you're in a situation where, for some reason you have anxiety, specifically around other people, do you have any coping mechanisms, or is it the opposite? Because you rarely are in that situation, you just don't know how to handle it?
I actually think it is the opposite. I think because you've got, would you say you have social anxiety disorder, right?
Yeah.
Wherein it affects your life. It's so frequent it affects your life. So therefore you've had a lot of therapy about this specific thing.
I guess so.
I haven't had that. So there are a lot of situations that come up where I'm this is horrible. I hate this. For example, something that makes me anxious is when friends of mine aren't getting on. That really worries me. My heart goes racing. I get all up in knots, and I worry because I'm oh, I understand why that person's annoyed with that person. I understand why that person's annoyed with that person. And oh no, what am I supposed to do? And who am I supposed to comfort? And how am I supposed to comfort them? And it's all about me. What am I supposed to do that's right? Which the truth is my friends' relationships to each other have nothing to do with me. They are not my responsibility. But that kind of thing really gets me tangled up, and has done over the years throughout basically every friendship and dynamic I've ever had. And the result is just that I'll get up in knots and I don't process it well. I have to really I can let that linger in me for months. Whereas what I should have done is really just vented it to someone or had a conversation and have them say, yeah, but Toby's got nothing to do with you really, does it? And I go, oh yeah, and it can all dissipate. But that's, so actually, yeah, I think I probably have worse coping mechanisms for anxiety because of that. Literally.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, not to get too deep into it, but I'm assuming that's more related to just your general anxieties. Just remind me, for example, why are you going to therapy?
I'm going to therapy at the moment on a journey of trying to connect to myself better, which sounds really hippy-dippy-doo-dah. But the fact of the matter is the reason I started going to therapy was because of a specific situation that I'm not going to get into here on the podcast. But the result of that specific situation and having a really good therapist over several months is that we've dug deeper and deeper and deeper to the root causes of all of these things.
Got it.
And actually what we're realizing is the issues that I have, many of them are circumventable by getting to the base of these issues. Like, really, it's about this process of like getting to know myself a little bit better. So I didn't have like a specific thing where I guess when you started going, was it you were specifically like social anxiety?
Specifically, yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, it wasn't like I had any trauma or like any like inciting incident. It was just a buildup of just negative traits that.
Right.
There were like big moments in my life, but it wasn't like immediately after that I'm like, okay, now I have social anxiety. Let me
sure
get therapy. It was more like I was always like an introvert. Slowly, over the course of being alone in college, only working on my channel, having thousands of people's opinions of me available online, my friends moving away, like not being around a lot of friends. Slowly you're always in your head when it comes to socializing, and then you get social anxiety disorder. In my life there were only two like times where I had like actual like panic attacks, and they were related. They were like when I was reading like forums online just bashing me.
Oh gosh.
So I really like literally had like the out of body experience where like you're sinking into your chair. For example, a lot of your problems, it seems like each traumatizing instance is like slightly different. Like you just had multiple different kinds of traumas in your life, while my traumas are just like there was a conversation and I just thought about it for a long time.
But it sounds like what you've managed to do maybe a little bit more successfully than myself is that you've identified the thread through the whole way, which is, oh yeah, this is clearly a me thing, this is a me thing, this is a me thing. Whereas I think not that the things that I've been through, and again, I'm not going to go into detail, haven't been at the hands of other individuals necessarily, but how I react to them, there are connecting features that's been part of the, to be quite honest, joy of therapy has been discovering what those thread-throughs are. And it sounds weird to say joy, but it is really to discover, oh, I always do that, and to fix those things, or to certainly be aware of them.
So I guess like it's not the opposite for me, but it's like for mine when I'm in therapy, it's slightly more boring because it's like the answer is always, I just thought about that too hard and I shouldn't have. That's what my symptoms are. Like you're wrong, you're overthinking it. That's it. That's the answer. And again, when I say like I'm blaming myself, it's not like I did something wrong. It's more like the reason why it's in my mind is because I am overthinking of it, not because the other person did something wrong to me or I did something wrong to them. It's just more I'm overthinking about this situation that happened to me and I shouldn't.
Do you ever worry that you might go too far the other way and start to self-deprecate and like to kind of
no, because like I said,
never assert your feelings and thoughts,
Through therapy, it's like you realize, again, that, at least I realized, that it wasn't my fault. It's just that, like, it's your mental illness. You can't blame other people.
No, I think that it's the use of the word fault. I think it's like fault implies a level of, it sounds quite negative. It implies intention and blame,
So while you're correct that using words can affect how you see things, obviously. So if you use words that are specifically more negative, like fault and, I don't know, disorder, for example, you'll begin to look at things negatively, or at least those situations. But I guess I'm either more desensitized to the word, let's say disorder or fault, or like there's a lot of words that to me, they're just neutral. While to other people, they're like either negative or positive. Like for me, they're just way more gray than it seems like other people use words for.
Yeah, this came up actually this week, right? Because you use language in quite a neutral sense, and I'm a sensitive butterfly. I'll just be honest. I'm a sensitive guy, and you and people mentioned, I think last week you heard it on the podcast, a kind of bluntness, but that's just you. You're just using words as they're intended, and so I'm a little bit like, because you've got, obviously you want the podcast to be really good. I would also like the podcast to be really good, and we had a conversation this week where I was super worried about like saying, hey, if we're doing feedback, can we do it in like a different forum? Because I feel like I'm just waking up to like messages about the podcast, a couple times a week that are just like, oh, did I do something wrong? You know what I mean? Even though that's not what you were doing at all. It was just, by the way, this needs changing, but wrong time of day. I don't know. I'm just reading it and it's very matter of fact,
I've always been able to separate the fact that like two opposite things could be in balance with each other and could be correct at the same time. So for example, if I'm critiquing you and let's say I'm using negative words to you, doesn't mean that I'm also just 100% negative in that moment. I could just be like you could be doing something wrong, but I'm still your friend, for example. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Or separate, for example, business with friendship. Like when I'm having I'm doing a business venture with my friend, I'm able to separate the fact that if I'm talking to him about, let's say right now, about things that we need to fix in the podcast, I'm both a colleague but still his friend. It's not like one or the other.
Yeah.
While some people are just, I guess, more sensitive towards
you.
the tone.
You brought up. We were talking about it, and you said about like directing and actors, and I was kind of, you said, you did directing in college, and my thing was that like, yeah, but when you're in college and you're doing a show or whatever, and you're doing director and actors, the label is given to you beforehand, so you know the dynamic. Whereas obviously we're friends who are just making a podcast together, and so the bit where we're being friends, and then the bit where it's like, oh, by the way, business stuff, and I don't want to get it wrong because like I want you put a lot into the podcast, and I want to, hold up my end as well. And so like it's really hard for me, I find the crossing of those things, that's one of those anxiety ones for me where I'm like, oh no, I'm really worried that like if I'm doing rubbish at the podcast, maybe it's like affecting our friendship or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah, which is weird because usually when it actually is about like social interaction and stuff, I'm the one who can't separate things. So for example, I can't separate the fact that when people comment online, they aren't real people. Like if you're a YouTuber,
Right.
You're not supposed to see the comments as people directly in your face saying those things, but I do. And that's the problem. That's what made me develop social anxiety, where it's like I'm unable to see people online differently than they are in real life. When in reality, people put on completely different personas, and it's like same thing. Like
so
online,
interesting.
I act the same way I am in real life. So I assume people do as well. But if I'm having, let's say, a business relationship with my friend, I'm able to separate whenever we're doing business versus when we're being friendly.
But also, as you mentioned on the podcast just a few weeks ago, being like kind of a what's a nice way of saying it? Kind of a rude boy to me. It's like that's just like a sign of friendship. That's the fact. That's a sign of I'm comfortable with you, which is the same for me. That's very much true. So I don't know. I think maybe I've been not burnt by, but like I'm definitely cautious of experiences where business and friendship goes like mix and then it goes wrong, and so there's an anxiety of like, well, I don't want that to happen here. The friendship's more important to me. So like, how do we, how do we make sure that? And I think the key for that is just like maintenance conversations. If I'm ever feeling anxious or you're feeling anxious, but I find it so interesting that you don't have that for the comment section, where I'm the complete opposite. Like for me, comments don't really faze me as much. So why do you think you can't separate that?
So I think it's because, again, we're already really good friends, so I know that you're not misjudging me. At least maybe you were, because apparently you did take offense to some of the things. But we can talk it out. We can actually have a conversation, and then you won't misjudge me, and then I'll feel better. But for example, comments, that's it. They have a false perception of me, and that irritates me. Because they only know one aspect of me. Let's say they saw a mistake in a video. That's it. That's my identity to them. Ron is that person who doesn't know that fact, or said that fact wrong, or has a different opinion to them, and they hate me for that, and they think that opinion defines who I am for some reason. And that's like in mass. That's thousands of people who have a false perception of me. It makes me very uncomfortable.
Yeah. See, it's interesting because like that's what I'm sort of worried about when I read the comments of the last one where we're having the debate about kind of morals and stuff. But I don't normally have that for videos because normally I'm talking about Pokemon. So if someone's got an issue with me from one of those videos, I just don't care. Like there's no moral stakes to it. It's whatever. Yeah. This isn't an important discussion. If someone doesn't like the way that I said Wiglet's name or something, the new Pokemon.
Hey, what's Wiglet?
It's a new Pokemon, apparently. If someone doesn't like the way I say its name or like something I said about it, it just doesn't matter. Who cares? Life's too short. But when it's about something that's like maybe a little bit more important, like perhaps moral standing and the things that I've been thinking about like on an intellectual level, if someone's going to get it like wrong about me, I'm really anxious about that. So I'll admit, I'm very anxious for when that episode goes live. But I hope that it is received in the way that it was intended. And if I have said anything stupid, the audience will point it out in quite a kind way, I hope.
But I assume whenever you get like, let's say you have to talk about like opinions that make people think about you in general outside of Pokemon. For example, I don't know, maybe you said something like a fact about a Pokemon, and then someone was like, hey, based on that fact, I think that you have this extreme political opinion that I don't think you have. That has happened to me multiple times, where it's like I've said nothing. I said something about Pokemon, and then people are like, "Wow, you must be this type of person that has anything."
Right.
Like, you just might be this general type of person that I 100% am not. That has not happened to you?
Do you know what? I think it has. I think like when I did Pokemon Tempest and like
yeah,
there was,
that's a good
in that story, like there's a character, so there's the character of Cass who's like the rival character.
Yeah.
And I think people were like pretty understanding of the fact that they were characters and not representative of my points of view, but I wanted Cass to be a sort of relatable antagonist, I guess. And so her journey is one of feeling like a big fish in a little pond. The pond gets bigger and she gets scared, and this is why she's quite, I suppose, quite xenophobic at first, because she's literally never met outsiders before, and this is kind of a scary big new world for her. And the audience that were just like, she's just racist, and then she flip-flops on her racism really weirdly. That was a little bit gutting to me, because I was... maybe it's just not, it's my first time writing anything like that. Maybe I shouldn't have been dealing with such big topics, I don't know, for a Pokemon series.
How are you going to get better when it comes to writing those topics if you don't
try?
out?
If you don't try, yeah. And I wanted to give the character some level of real grounding. Like, I didn't want to just base them on, like, I'm going to destroy the world because I'm evil. So I wanted to give them something, and, like, the idea that their home is being threatened is something that I really wanted to translate, but maybe the way it was read or maybe the way it was received, some people didn't get what I was putting down there or whatever. Luckily, people haven't attributed it, I think, to me, because like there's plenty of other characters in the show that have totally different points of view and like all around the spectrum of like what's good and what's bad and what's right and what's wrong. But yeah, there's definitely like, I think there was a big concern there that people would see a character that they don't like and then think, the author must think this. Yeah, but I've never had it, I think maybe like once or twice direct to me, oh, you must be politically this or that. And I just sort of go, if you're getting this from a Pokemon video, like, I don't care.
If someone gets really like triggered over like something that I said that has nothing to do, and it's all in their mind, then I'm like, okay, this person has issues. I'm not gonna like that. That happens every other week or something. If it's already something that I was self-conscious about, or something that it's completely like, it's just like a normal thing that they thought about me, but it's a completely like inaccurate assessment or like an opposite of assessment, something that like I hate. Like if they describe me as the kind of person that I actually do not like, and they think that that's me, and I've always thought about making sure that people don't think that I am that, then I will get a little annoyed. Is because my entire life I've been held up to a higher standard, whether it be in real life as like, let's say, the smart kid or the artist, or on YouTube as, a YouTuber. I have a lot of fans. I don't want to...
You don't want to disappoint that image. You don't want to...
Yeah. And therefore, I don't try doing things that I am not good at. And because of that, I don't grow. And I don't, because the way you grow is by doing things that, new things that you aren't good at, and then learning.
It's a really hard thing to be foolish, especially in front of an audience of thousands, and to say, I'm okay with making mistakes, I'll grow from this. That's a really challenging thing. I don't know even that I'm good at it. I'm happy to look the fool when it comes to like Pokemon knowledge, but like when it's like the important things, like even just now, this very moment, talking about like the character and the themes of xenophobia or whatever, where I don't feel well equipped. I'm scared about being foolish because I don't want to be, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I think it's better that I risk saying the wrong thing and apologize if I'm wrong. For a much more light-hearted conversation, because I think if someone's listened to the end of last podcast and straight into this, it's been deep, and you, sir, accused me of not coming up with topics, right? I got like the perfect light-hearted fun topic that I hadn't even ever thought about before. I wonder if you have.
Well, the problem is that we're not doing it because we're going to generate a Pokemon now. Too bad.
What?
Those segments are at the end, Toby. You know this by now.
Okay.
Now let's see how we can connect this randomly generated Pokemon to Wiglet.
Please be Diglett. How perfect would that be?
Jirachi. We are not putting Wiglet in the thumbnail.
Jirachi is awesome. I think it might be my favorite mythical.
Really? Yeah, it's definitely top 5 maybe. I mean, there aren't that many. But let me think. I don't want. Okay, I'll say top 3, but this is not my official top 3 mythicals. My number 1 favorite is Marshadow, but I think Jirachi used to. I mean, Deoxys is probably my second. No, if we're counting Deoxys is my actual favorite. But when it comes to like the Pixie mythicals, like the small ones,
sure.
Then yeah, Marshadow 100%. Then Jirachi maybe second actually.
You're like so sure on Marshadow here. How come? What's the deal? I don't rate it that high.
Oh, he's cute and cool at the same time. He has his form, like his Zenith form, like when it comes like green and fights. That's I love that color scheme, and he looks pretty badass. I love Pokemon that are both cute and cool at the same time, or like adorable, like very cool. Whether it be like what they're based on, their design. Like Marshadow literally looks like this, ghost child, child soldier ghost, like that's deep, and complex. But also, I like the design as a representation of that lore. And yeah, he's a little feisty little dude.
Fair enough.
Like he's not just cute like all the other like Pixie legendaries. Like he's actually a bit cool too.
I was really sad that Marshadow. I mean, it unfortunately fell in the era of mythical Pokemon that don't have much like in-game going on for them, and that always because I always thought there's got to be room for such a cool story in Alola. Like there's a whole graveyard area in the first island that I think would have been perfect to just do something with Marshadow and training, and like because Harla's the kahuna of the island as well, the fighting guy. So like I think you could have done a whole thing there that would have been really awesome. But
yeah, but my opinion
hasn't been doing that.
Of a Pokemon rarely has anything to do with how it's implemented.
Sure, it's fair enough.
This is a cool Pokemon. Like I base it on the merit of the Pokemon itself, not how Game Freak like screwed it over, because that has nothing to do with the Pokemon itself. That's just how it was implemented. Is that why you don't really think of Marshadow as much? Is because of how it's implemented?
A lot of the later gen mythicals, I think how it's implemented impacts a great deal. Like in terms of like the era of events for mythical Pokemon.
I don't know. Have you ever gotten a Jirachi?
Have I ever gotten a Jirachi?
I don't think you've done an event with a Jirachi.
No, but what I have done is I've played Pokemon Channel the whole way through many times. And then that was obviously really fun because when Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire came out, I was like, I knew that the Deoxys battle was at the end, and so I traded myself in for my first Oras run through, a Jirachi, to be on my team at level 1. And so Jirachi and Mudkip were both my starters, or Trico actually. And then the final battle was Jirachi versus Deoxys in space. It was super cool. I loved that. And so when you get the member card for Darkrai, and like you end up going to sleep in bed and you wake up on the Nightmare Island and then you get the Darkrai battle, it's a small thing. But I think it adds so much to the mythical Pokemon, giving it its own environment and scenario. Victini in Gen 5, again, like I just think it's really fantastic.
We can all agree that the events are positive and we want more of them, but it's never affected my perception of the Pokemon because, like, again, Darkrai, it's already amazing and cool on its own. Like, I've never done the event. Like I'd say 90% of people haven't done mythical events even when they existed. So it's like...
Sure.
What, you're going to expect people to not like Darkrai, for example, and think that Darkrai is not cool, even though it's clearly a cool-looking thing?
But, like, in the ranking of mythical Pokemon, these Pokemon, the ones that have events, just have an edge over the ones that don't, in my mind, because there's something really cool that I can relate to them that I'm like... Whereas, like, with Marshadow, the only experience I've really had of a Marshadow is downloading it via code, putting it in the game, looking at it, going, yeah, it looks kind of cool, and then... I guess watching it in the I Choose You movie.
Yep.
And so that's like all I've got to work with for it. Whereas obviously with the mythicals that get events or have like bigger movies or whatever, there's more ways to enjoy that Pokemon and see how cool it can be. That's all. It's not that Marshallow's bad, it's just that the other mythicals have had more of a spotlight, I suppose. Time to shine.
But I always thought Jirachi was very cool. I love the color scheme. I love that exact green that it has too, like on the tags. And the fact that its eye, like, it has like this destructive eye that again, that's a cool mixture of like cute and then very godlike cool element. Like Jirachi for me was even before Arceus. I thought Jirachi honestly was the most like godlike Pokemon.
It's Arceus' color scheme as well. It's white and the same. It's the exact same white and gold. I've tried to come up with theories connecting those two Pokemon for quite a while actually. Yeah, unsuccessfully.
But like think of it, like before Jirachi, like even Rayquaza and Deoxys, or like let's say specifically Rayquaza, like the strongest Pokemon, Mega Rayquaza, right? Or at least at the time. Even though it's literally my favorite legendary Pokemon and it's like top 5 favorite Pokemon of all time for me, it was never like this is a deity for me. While Jirachi, this felt like it was based on like actual deities that we can see in the real world, like a
Yes.
destructive eye that if you open, things happen, or like we can grant wishes, and it's like it actually feels like real world deities.
There's something quite sinister about it in that it's just this cute little baby from space, and then it's like, whoa, hang on, whose eye is that, and what the heck is a Doom Desire? You know what I mean? It's like, is that the eye of some greater, like, you're just looking into the eye of a god, like, literally.
Yeah, it's almost like an avatar, where it's like it contains like a god within it or something, but it's just a cute little dude.
I've always been a fan of that trope, like in fiction, actually hugely, is like, obviously there's the, you have your characters who are incredibly powerful, they look incredibly powerful, they're super badass, they've got a million spikes and blades and guns and whatever else, huge muscles, and they look the part. But I've always been a fan of the trope of the unsuspecting but unbelievable power that's just in the form of like something a little bit smaller, unsuspecting, I think, is the word. Something that you're just
unsuspecting is the word for me. Like, I wouldn't say like smaller. Yeah. Like, I'm like the trope specifically that I like isn't specifically like little kids who are powerful or like little children.
Yeah.
Unless it's like Aang, for example. He's not like, he doesn't look like a chibi, you know what I'm saying? He just looks like a normal 12-year-old.
Sure.
So that I really like. I do like, I guess, but here's the thing. I really do like Aang. Like, I love how Aang, when he's serious, he's like scary. But it's because his childlike nature isn't over the top. It's not like a parody of being a child.
No,
it's more like, no, he's just a normal child and wants to goof off.
He's a goof. He's a goofball. He has fun. He's connected to the world. He loves, but don't miss it. You know what I mean?
I don't like the huge juxtaposition of little cute thing, like a Pikachu looking thing being super powerful. It's more, I love normal people who are unsuspecting and actually may not even want and don't want to be responsible for things, but when it's serious and they actually need to save the world, they step up and they're like the most valuable character, and they throw away all their weaknesses, or like, I mean, their weaknesses maybe even manifest when they are very serious, like Aang, for example. But like, one of my favorite, like literally my favorite character in fiction is from Naruto. He's this lazy guy who like doesn't want to be part of things, basically, but then literally you find out over the course of the show he has the highest IQ out of everybody, and and by the end of the show he's literally like a general that is leading an entire army and is like the most valuable person other than Naruto himself in terms of like leading, not in powers. I love people who step up. That's what I love. Not like power wise that this little thing contains crazy power. It's more, I love people who step up when the time needs them to in fiction. Yeah,
especially to face against a, I guess, clearly daunting opponent who, again, like has all of the various size or blades or whatever to take them on, but through this incredible power that they've learned, usually the power of friendship, they're able to kind of take on the big guy. But I also like it the other way on. Like, I like the villains who are like, I guess sort of like Volo, but not really, but like the kind of the Jester King who has been there all along, who, the mask comes off and actually it turns out that they were the real threat all along. Forget the big shogun who's wearing the crown, like, this is the person that you really didn't want to mess with.
It's a fun trope. It's not my favorite.
Stuff like that I really enjoy. I've always really enjoyed that.
Like, if we're going back to the trope that we were talking about before, where it's like, my favorite actual trope really is, because I see, like, all my favorite characters are these, are, unsuspecting, but in a good way, where it's like, you haven't watched Community. I mean, not Community.
I have watched Community.
No, not Community. Sorry, not Community. Parks and Rec.
Not all the way, no. Yeah.
Okay, but you've seen enough of Ron Swanson, for example.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you think that he just doesn't care about anything, and but he's actually literally the one who, he's like the most skilled of the group, and actually cares about all the people around him, but he just doesn't show it unless it's a very serious situation. I love those people, like characters that may not get along with, like, let's say the protagonist, but when it's all said and done, and when like the serious stuff happens,
they show up. They're
the ones who show up the most, and they're like the right hand person. That's my favorite kind of character. Maybe that's why I love like starter Pokemon, and I also love like the type of Pokemon I love, like Sceptile, are the ones that are just like, they seem chill, but then when it's down to serious business, they're the ones you want to choose.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like villain tropes, Like you just said, one of your favorite kind of villain tropes. Like what are other tropes?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of my favorite villain tropes.
Does like Gollum count as an
antagonist?
Because I just mean like he doesn't really count as the whole kind of jester villain but he's sort of like a villain.
He's definitely by definition of a villain. He's a villain. He's maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not much of like a main antagonist. But he's definitely.
Well, I see. Now villain. I don't know because there's like this is like there's that juxtaposition of like Sauron is like, and I'm not a huge Lord of the Rings person, but like he's the big bad, right? But at the end of the day, I think the battle almost between Smeagol and Frodo and Sam at the end is like that's the true battle for like there's the big battlefield with everyone lined up and goodies versus baddies and the king of evil, and then there's this smaller, more intimate battle going on between three individuals who are sort of deciding the fate of the world. And I like that like it's not like an imposing villain. I guess I like that it's just a kind of like I say, almost unsuspecting that it should all come down to this. You know what I mean?
As a story element, I love that, but as a character trope, I don't think that's like something I ever think about.
No.
You like obviously a lot of people don't know the difference between like antagonist and villain, for example.
Yeah.
Again, to reiterate for the audience, antagonist is not necessarily a villain. It's literally just someone who's opposing the protagonist. They don't have to be bad. They can be actually very, very good. But as long as they're in opposition to the protagonist or whoever we're following, who could be bad, for example, they are. I guess like
Colrus is a good example of that, right? He's not really a villain; he's an antagonist, right? I mean, in Gen 5,
he's not evil. He's not evil, but he could be a villain because, for example, he's done nefarious things like capture Kyurem and force it to do things. But in the name of science, so it's like he's a very good gray. Maybe that's why Black and White 2 is a really good representation of the gray within because of Colrus.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Actually, I hadn't even thought about that, but I like that a lot.
Well, N was always the representation of like a really good representation of gray, or the opposition between the black and white within a person. Like he's not necessarily gray, but he has black and white within him because he doesn't.
Yeah.
He takes everything to the extreme and doesn't see how things can be gray. Same thing with Hugh, for example, in Pokemon. Like Hugh cannot see things as gray. He sees things as black and white. He sees Team Plasma as only villains, even the reformed ones he doesn't like. Because of whatever happened to him in his life. Throughout the game, he slowly learns that there's gray. Things aren't.
Yeah.
Black and white. They're not always black and white.
Black and white, only knows what's right.
I am a huge fan of villains who, like, you can 100% see their point, and I hate villains or antagonists who act like villains. Like, I love being evil, and I'm doing this because you guys are below me and whatever. I hate those. That's my least favorite type of antagonist. I agree. Antagonists who seem like cool guys, and you can hang around with them, and they won't like kill you. But they just are taking things to the extreme, and they're trying to help, but they're doing it the completely wrong way.
I also hate the grounding and justification of like, well, it's my birthright to be an asshole. You know, it's like it's my God-given right to be above you. That to me is not enough of a grounding in a person. Like, it's got to be like, even with Ganondorf, who's like pretty villainly villain, there's at least one game where he's sort of like, like my people kind of got screwed over. And everyone else just got to live in like peace, and so like I wanted that for my people. And suddenly you're like, you're like a really good ruler. That's kind of really interesting.
Yeah.
And then in later games, it's just like, nah, he's just king of evil villain, and I hate that. Like, I don't want. What do you mean? I want more.
That's how he is in the beginning games, and then maybe in the middle games.
It is. There's only Wind Waker is really where he talks about like the kind of almost political reason as to why he's doing what he's doing, and it's got no ground.
That's when it's Ganondorf, I guess, but when it's Ganon, that's just the embodiment of evil. So it's like, I mean, that's not he's not an actual.
Oh, I'm using the name interchangeably there. But like, for example, with like Ozai,
he's not an interesting villain.
I don't love him as a villain, because
he's a good contrast to Aang.
He is. He works perfectly for Aang, and that's true. I think a good antagonist or a good villain. There's a really brilliant video by Lessons from the Screenplay of like, your villain has to sort of almost be complementary to your protagonist if you want to really get into some good writing. Like
for example, the Joker, he's really enjoyable because of how he contrasts to the Batman.
Yeah, 100%. I love that stuff. I think that stuff's really worthwhile.
But yeah, if you want to keep it to the Avatar universe, like people love Zahir, for example, the third season villain of Legend of Korra, because he's exactly what I love in villains, where it's like
he's so grounded.
He's grounded. He's a normal guy just with a plan that he thinks is good, even though it's bad, and he's not gonna go around killing people and think that he's better than everybody. He's just.
I think with him in particular, because of the way that he is part of this, and this is, I guess, a minor spoiler warning for season 3 of Korra if you've not watched it already. He is an airbender, and he gains the ability of airbending. And you see him really meditate on the kind of previous airbenders who have come before him. You sort of see a lot of Aang in him, and that sort of makes him a really interesting and complex villain, because a lot of the things that he's following are the exact same teachings that our previous protagonists had followed. And that's where he sort of becomes quite scary and a credible threat, because you're like, he's got a point. He really might have a point in here somewhere.
Well, I, for example, love the characters, let's say Game of Thrones. I guess there's the main antagonist, I guess, is technically like the White Walkers, but like that's not really they're
the worst antagonists of or villains of the show. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You know, the Cersei Lannisters and the Littlefingers, they are so much more interesting characters.
But exactly, but here's the thing, that all these antagonists are also protagonists. So that's the problem, where it's like, well, it's not a problem. It's very interesting and everybody loves it, including me. But it's like, that's just not the kind of tropes that I personally like. I do like how all the antagonists in that show, except for the White Walkers, are pretty much, okay, they're not all great. Never mind. Game of Thrones has pretty despicable people. But it's more the protagonists that are gray. So there's no like white. It's only black or gray, really. Which is interesting.
There is. I mean, like, Game of Thrones sets us off with...
Oh, yeah, Jon Snow, I just realized, is very white.
Yeah, Ned Stark and Jon Snow, who take... But they're too far to the extreme the other way. They take honor so seriously that what it does is it gets them, and sometimes the people that they love, killed.
Yeah.
Like, so much bad happens in the World of Thrones that maybe would have been avoided if Ned Stark was a little less honorable. But alas, he is honorable, and so bad things happen.
That's why I really liked, obviously, Tyrion, where he's like the most gray of the white protagonists in that show. Like, Tyrion really is like on the upper end of morality. I don't know. I'm not going to ponder the morality of these fictional characters who are clearly all of them have done bad things.
Yes,
but yeah, everybody likes Tyrion. At least from what I've seen, Tyrion is one of my favorite protagonists. Or characters in general, and if you watch the show, you'll know why. And whatever his trope is, tropes he manifests, I like that.
Are you up to date on Hot D right now?
Let's talk about that.
So
let's talk about
so good.
I'm very much enjoying House of Dragons.
Yes, same.
Spoiler alert. Although I'm not. Well, okay,
no,
actually, we're not going to talk about plot. We're not going to.
Let's not do spoilers.
It's just okay. I really love Viserys. That's a good example of a protagonist. Okay. That I think he's probably, while he has done things that are wrong and bad, I like how he's still a good person. Like, clearly he's like one of the most virtuous people in that universe. Yeah. And I love that.
I agree. I think it's getting him killed very slowly, but
very
I
much.
don't know.
And like,
we'll see.
There's definitely should be consequences, at least based on the world. If you're good, you shouldn't have like a plot armor or anything. But I like characters who I can relate to. I like characters who are normal. Even in like shows where every character is crazy and extreme, I gravitate towards the straight men and the people who are just like the most relatable people. But it seems like that's most of the House of Dragons cast. I think they're very gray in terms of like their ambitions and stuff. But they're just normal people, which I like. Like, I can see why everybody thinks the way they are. They're not like... It's... Okay, here's what the complication is. They're grayer, but they're all less evil in House of Dragons. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm going to cut out whatever this is.
There's no one who's done anything, like, overtly horrendous.
There is. Like, Viserys has, technically.
There are now.
But that was the one thing, and that's what I like.
Yes, he did.
There's a balance. There's a good balance. Like, a lot of the Game of Thrones characters, like, they're already over the edge in terms of, like, how I judge them as people. Like,
but I think a lot of that comes with Game of Thrones. You've seen the whole story. Like, I'm sure many of the characters that we're following and enjoying right now are probably going to do some terrible things. I I was going to make a joke about how it's confirmed that Ron can only relate to the straight men. Did you pick up on that?
I knew when I said it, like, even though it is a term that everybody uses, like, when referring to just the normal characters in the show.
Normal characters in the show.
Okay, find a different word I can use for straight men and I'll use it. But like for now, I'm using the word straight men.
You mean characters who are walking down the straight and narrow path? Not anything else. Cancelled.
Like sometimes I like okay, let's call them boring. Just so we...
There you go, the boring character.
I like, even like in shows, like there's a lot of anime where like people, like for example in anime, love the characters that are very powerful and like super like extreme and like different because they're, you know, it's fun to, the uniquely designed characters are the ones that are just over the top or, you know, interesting. But I gravitate towards the characters who act normal or who are like, actually say what needs to be said in the situations that they need to say it. They don't bottle things up and they're just like normal, they're normal people, well-adjusted, not traumatized people. I mean, they made. Oh, for example, Kakashi in Naruto. I don't know, who cares if Toby knows who he is? He's a very traumatized guy, but he acts like a normal person, and that's what I like. I like that. Oh, there are characters that act normal, but then their backstory you hear then like, oh, they've overcome a lot, but they still have come out of it. Yeah, like a normal person who's helping everybody else. I just like those characters, and I guess Tyrion is an example of that. He's gone through a lot, but he's still throughout the show, he still was virtuous. Now in the book, he goes off the deep end a bit. I hear. Where they split, but he's still like, he's gone through so much and he's stayed a relatively good person for that era, for medieval times. Sure. And I like that trope. That's one of my favorite tropes. I guess Aang is a good example of that, although Aang is not my favorite. Zuko and Iroh are literally that. That's why everybody likes Zuko and Iroh. That's why Iroh is my favorite character. Yeah. Characters who've gone through a lot, know their mistakes.
I think that there's a way of approaching it. So I think for you, for example, maybe you like that character and you like learning about the things they've gone through afterwards to understand their resolve and why they are where they are. And I enjoy that as much as the next person, but I also really enjoy, like, I love watching a flawed character and not really getting, like, why do you behave this way, and then getting looped in on it a bit later and going. So like Jaime Lannister, I guess, is the example of that, where it's like, you're like, man, you kind of suck, dude. And then over time, you get that scene in the bathtub with Brienne, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm beginning to understand now. Like,
yeah, I like that. That's
you are still doing your healing process, and people haven't given you a chance to do so.
Yeah, I like it when it's slowly everything is recontextualized when it comes to that character. You're like, yeah, it's not like I hate it when you're questioning why they're doing their things. Like for example, is it Aemon Targaryen? Who's Matt Smith? What is he?
Daemon.
I always say Aemon for some reason. Is Aemon? Wait, Aemon's the old guy in.
They've all got the same name.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
They're all Daemon Targaryen. All of them.
I mean, they literally share names with other characters in the show because they're the ancestors of these characters. But Daemon, for example, I never know what he's gonna do, and it's cool. For example, with Homelander, because you never know what he's gonna do, but you know why he does it. For example, because he's evil. but Daemon, it's like, I don't know what you are. I don't know what you're going to do. And it's like frustrating me. You're a very good character because of that, but it's not a personal trope that I like. But for example, Jaime Lannister, it's like, no, he's been evil for like 2 seasons, let's say. I'm not questioning why he's doing it because I'm just like, yeah, he's a bad guy. But then slowly you realize why he's doing it. And then you're like, and then you question why he did the things in the past. And then you realize the answers. So same thing for good guys. Like, it's like, oh, like, why was this character doing that? Why did this character have this weird trope? And it's like, or not trope, quirk. Why does this character have this quirk? It's like, I never guessed why. He just has this quirk. And then slowly his backstory is revealed and like, oh, that's why he has the quirk. I never questioned it, but it's like, whoa, that recontextualizes everything that he did in the past. Like that was just how he dealt with his trauma, but like he dealt it with it in a good way at least. But like,
I think it depends on the medium. For me, like, with a show like Avatar, when starting watching it, I didn't expect it to be the kind of show that it ended up being. Like, I didn't expect it to be basically as in-depth as it was and to have such great character work. So, when watching it, there was definitely no level of, like, for the first time, certainly, there was definitely no leveling of, like, why is Iroh doing what he's doing? Why is Zuko doing what they're doing? They're just bad guys, and that's fine. And then you just kind of watch it. With Thrones, for example, though, and certainly with having watched Thrones and now watching House of the Dragon, everything is under scrutiny from me at the moment. Like every scene, every ad break, we're sitting down and we're discussing like, so hang on, what do you think that relationship was? What do you think that dynamic was? Because that's where me and Dan and Phoebe and Dan's girlfriend, we all really enjoy that dynamic and that banter about these characters. It's different stories, I guess.
Well, yeah, that's definitely fun, and that's something I love. I also like when it's not innocuous, but like it's a thing that you didn't even consider. So, for example, one of the characters in Naruto, he's always late for like hundreds of episodes. There are instances, like a few instances, where he's just late to the mission. Like he comes late, everybody's waiting for him. Literally, you find out like hundreds of episodes later. Spoiler alert. He's visiting the grave of his dead friend. And it's like, you're never questioning why he's late, because he's a guy who you think would be late. He's just a guy, he's lost on the path of life, he says. But he's like, no, he's a very, everything he does is for a reason, and I love that reveal.
On a not much smaller note, and while it's not a character choice per se, there was, I'm watching more of... Full Metal Brotherhood, Alchemist, and the idea on a much shorter note, on a smaller note, he's short. In the last couple of episodes, that joke that they've played a number of times might actually have like an in-law reason that's sort of just been suggested as to why he's short. And I just thought, that's really cool. I love that that's been like a recurring gag, and that now it's
okay, just making sure that's what
that
you
might have a
about.
reason behind it. That's
and they use
cool.
that reason. Let's say that comes up.
I thought that was super cool, because I just thought it was like this kind of like gag it's kind of funny. It's not that funny. They bring it up a lot.
Yeah, they do overdo it.
Oh, it's a plot thing. That's cool.
I mean, you got to the point. So, for example, do you remember the episode where they delivered a baby?
Yep.
Where Winry delivered a baby, and you're like, okay, this is probably just like a filler thing to like, not filler, but it's only there.
It's supplementary
to develop the characters and their relationships. But no, it comes up later in a very important speech where Ed's like, you gave birth to a you helped give birth. You're here to give life. That filler-esque scene helped
inform much bigger moment.
Exactly. I love that.
No, I liked that a lot too. I'm very much enjoying it. I'm watching it now very separately from Phoebe. I said, like, look, I just got to go ahead and watch this thing. So I carved out some time yesterday to watch some episodes, and really enjoying it. The problem is I can't do anything else while I watch it, because it's the kind of show I want to watch. Like, I don't want to, be doing other fidgeting and doing other stuff, really, more than the absolute minimum. So, like, I have to set aside time for it, so it's going to be a long time till I've seen it all, but I'm excited.
Just like you did with Attack on Titan, where like, oh, I'm up to this point, wow, like, and you're informing me. Do that with with this arc, and if you want the whole show, because this arc, every episode, there's revelations, and like things are like, this is one of my favorite arcs in all of television. I love it.
Cool.
But
I want to tell you my fun topic.
Well, actually, let's go back to House of Dragon, because we really only talked about Viserys.
Fine, I'll talk about what is probably going to end up being one of my favorite TV shows ever, I guess.
I loved Rhaenyra. I'm sad that the younger Rhaenyra is not part of the show anymore now that there's a time skip, which again, actually time skips are... Time skip, my favorite trope of all time. Plot point. Plot-wise. Love time skip. Wish everything had a time skip. Even my life.
Dude, every episode of this show has a time skip of some form or another.
True, but I like time skip where I love new designs. I love seeing the new designs, how they changed the characters. It's not like 2 months. But I was a big fan of the previous Rhaenyra actress.
Same.
And so I'm not attached to the new ones, but like I think they're doing a good job and everything. But I really like Rhaenyra as like a protagonist. The only thing that I just don't like, but it's more like in real life, Rhaenyra and what's Alicent?
Alicent, yeah.
They should just talk it out. That would resolve everything. And I hate when that's the plot. I hate when plots are like they could be resolved by just talking it out. But obviously it's way more complicated. I agree.
I think it is a bit more complicated than that. I don't think they can just talk it out. I think the
difference is in the book that it's based on. They weren't like best friends before this.
Right.
But in the show, they were literally best friends.
Set out to be best friends.
Like, okay, come on, talk about it for a second.
I feel like episode 5 does a pretty good job of like explaining why they wouldn't necessarily be on the same talking terms anymore. But so far, I'm buying everything. I'm happy with everything. Everything's landing right for me. I'm not...
everything's landing. Like the plot itself is landing. It's more like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, come on. Let's talk it out, ladies.
Fair enough. Let's just get you knuckleheads in a room, and we can just figure this out.
But the conflict itself is very interesting because the conflict isn't that they're not talking to each other. I love the politics. I've always loved the politics of Game of Thrones, and this is what the show is about. And I think everybody who enjoyed season 1 to 4 of Game of Thrones would very much enjoy this, especially since it's literally the book that it's based on is finished. And George R. Martin, anything that he writes is always enjoyable to fans, and he's very closely related to the production of the show. So yeah, I think check it out.
Love all the dragon designs in it as well. I just gotta quickly throw that in there.
The dragons look really good.
The dragons are
sick. It's
sick.
like Pokemon. It's like Pokemon. Every dragon's different. Although I really do think my favorite dragon design really was the 3 dragons that Daenerys had. Like I think that was like my favorite.
Yeah, that's fair.
The last thing that is related. Have you been watching Rick and Morty?
I haven't actually. I'm very behind on.
Like a whole season behind?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You know what's funny?
Okay, what's funny?
So I have, remember the shirts, the original Stitch shirts, the designs?
Yeah.
You know how I downloaded those pictures and now they're my wallpaper? And they interchange, like every minute it's a different Pokemon in my different Pokemon background. You know what? Jirachi is now my background. Like it just changed to Jirachi, the Pokemon that we generated. If you forgot what we generated. But yeah, so I guess you haven't been watching Rick and Morty, but the latest season, 6th season, I think it's back to form. I'm very enjoying it. I'm very much enjoying it.
I'm gonna watch it all. I'll catch up on it. I might just binge it all when it's done. To be honest, like I always find those episodes way too short, and then I'm like, oh, I wish I had more to watch. You know?
Yeah.
I don't want to wait week to week.
A sign of a good show is like, wow, it's done. I wanted more. Laenor's design in Game of Thrones, in House of Dragon, I love how he looks like in the time skip. I love the hair. Yeah. I love what he's wearing. I don't know. Very cool looking guy.
Very cool character.
I also love always what Alicent is wearing. It's always like green.
Yes. Yeah.
And fancy. The costume design in the show is really good. If you like costume design, watch Game of Thrones. Let's move on to that fun thing you wanted to talk about. We have 10 minutes.
Okay. Easy. It's a 10-minute topic. Okay. Do you have a sibling or
Bye.
or a friend that you've known since they were really, really young?
Yes, bye.
When you have a dream about that person, how old are they?
Oh, wow, interesting. Each person's different.
Okay. Ask your parents how old you are in their dreams.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
This is what blew my mind. My mum told me that when she dreams of me, I'm 6. That blew my mind. I thought, wait. So I called up my mum. Mum, when you dream of me, how old am I? She's like, oh, you're about 8. Dad, how old am I? Yeah, you're about 4 or 5, you're school age. Like all the time? They're like, no, it varies, but mostly like you're a child when we dream of you. And I thought that was so interesting. I talked to Phoebe. Phoebe called her mum. Her mum said same thing. Yeah, you're 3, 4 in the dreams. And I just thought this was the most
only talking about
interesting
parents,
thing.
Really.
Yeah. But like, obviously, like, because I have friends who, like, I've got my friend Ollie who's like, I always just see him as like an 8-year-old, like always. And I don't think if I ever dream of him, he's not that way. So it's super bizarre.
Interesting.
But,
okay, so all my friends in my dreams are late teenage.
Interesting.
Because I think that when it comes to like the plots of my dreams, those can always fit. Like even if we're adults, like we're doing adult things, being late teenage still makes sense. If we're doing like childish thing, like I don't know, something in school or something. Still, being a teenager makes sense. I think teenager is like the ideal thing from my mind's plot, like how my mind makes plots for
I guess
dreams.
So, yeah.
So yeah, teenagers.
It's just fascinating.
All the strangers
never thought of this.
Okay, no, all the strangers that I meet are my age though. Like in terms of like if I meet like a hot woman, she's gonna be like my age. But like,
okay, I don't need to know the plot of those dreams. That's fine. You dream whatever you want.
No, and even like I guess the adults in my I've only known the adults in my life as adults. So yeah, they're adults in my dream. Yeah. But honestly, the ages, like when it comes to my dreams. Okay, if we're talking about dreams, we're gonna talk about dreams, son. When it comes to dreams, like because I always ponder my dreams, because I'm a big fan of lighting. Lighting affects my life every second. How I see lighting in my room, in where I go on walks, affects my mood. So same thing with dreams, where it's like I love dreams. Because the lighting is completely different in familiar situations, in familiar settings. Like if I'm in my room or my former school or just walking around my neighborhood in my dream, the lighting is completely different to the point where like I try to chase the lighting, how the lighting is in my dream in real life. Like I'll try to like recreate it. Like if I was in my room I have all these LED lights. And if I was dreaming about my room, I will try to recreate that so I can feel nostalgic or I can feel this like uncanniness, but like a comfortable uncanniness where it's like, oh, this is new, this is interesting, but also familiar at the same time. That's what I want to recreate a lot of times when I'm in my room and changing the lights, or I'm going on a walk in like an unfamiliar time of day. Like if you go on a walk on a time of day that you rarely walk, everything looks a bit different than it was because the sun's a completely different direction, the shadows are different. You'll make a new memory, especially if you're listening to music and now you can remember that walk. So that's how much I love dreams, where I try to recreate them, I guess. So it's lighting. It's lighting that I focus on more than the age of my friends.
Yeah.
Oh, well, here's what's interesting is that I have on my phone notes of all my dreams. Not all my dreams, but some of them that I can remember.
A bunch of them, sure.
Obviously, 80% of them I forget within
minutes. Yeah.
But like,
I'm definitely quite a vivid dreamer. Like, I really like.
Yeah, me too.
I see the images very clearly and feel the moods very clearly. The oldest note on my phone is a episode of Doctor Who that my brain made up.
Ooh, that's
I've
fun.
I've got that script still, and I once read it out to Phoebe about 2 years ago, and she went, "Dude, that's like a really good episode of Doctor Who," and I was like, "Thanks, I think it'd be cool."
You know what's crazy? So this is not dream related, but it's like making up like a scenario that you're trying to chase and find. From the age of, let's say, 13 to 17, in my mind, there was this route in Hoenn in the games that I made up. I thought existed. All my life, I'm like, wow, I remember that. That's such a beautiful route. Or like, I want to go there again. But I'm like, but where is it? It's not a thing. I'm like, I slowly realize that not only does it not exist in Hoenn, but it actually is a route in Sinnoh. And my whole life, I'm like, wow, that was one of my favorite routes. But I always attributed it to Hoenn, and it's not even a cool route. It's a boring route. It's the route between Vilstone and what's it called?
Olberg?
No,
that's not right.
No, that's not even correct.
How it works.
Vilstone
Pastoria.
and Pastoria.
Okay.
The one south of Vilstone, between leading to Pastoria.
Okay.
For some reason, because I only played Diamond and Pearl once in my childhood, while, for example, Hoenn I played a billion times, Black and White I played multiple times, it's the most nostalgic to me, even though it's not my favorite Sinnoh, because I misremember a lot of the routes, and they're fuzzy. And that's my favorite kinds of memories. The ones where it's like I misremember something and it's like way more grand. And that's why Hoenn, even though it's like one of my favorite routes, is not nostalgic to me anymore because I remember everything about it, especially since I play Oras or I listen to the music all the time. I mean, I listen to the music of everything, but I actually I memorized Hoenn, and now it's not nostalgic anymore. And I wish I just didn't do that because that feeling of misremembering routes in Sinnoh lingered and made me think of. I love thinking of memories that didn't actually exist. I love that.
I get what you mean.
Okay, but some of these are funny. I'm not gonna tell you the dream because again, nobody cares when you talk about dreams. It's the most boring thing to hear dreams sometimes. But the titles of how I wrote down these dreams, like I didn't write down the entire dream. I just wrote like a hook, like one line to describe the dream. One of them is like, someone is deleting the trees in Hoenn. That's my dream. Someone's deleting the trees in Hoenn. What does that mean?
That sounds like you're a conspiracy theorist in the Hoenn region. Someone's deleting the trees. We all live in a video game.
Another one. Daniel, my brother. Daniel and I robbed the Apple store.
Great.
Here's what's funny. Here's actually crazy. This could have been a prediction. This was before he started working at the Apple store.
This was before you robbed the Apple store.
This is
That's
before
nuts.
that. Eventually, we do end up robbing the Apple store. But this is probably like a year ago, like before my brother even started working there.
I had one the other night where I was I struggle with technology and like just trying to place a text or a call. I feel like I can't remember the specifics. There was like an emergency situation. I had to call emergency services in my dream. Yeah. And like just getting the phone to like unlock and to type the right buttons and then hitting delete and being really precise and getting the right ones really just eluded me, and it was really bothering me.
Yeah, that's a normal dream. This is a dream that comes up a lot as a person who's not afraid of heights, where I'm driving on a bridge and the bridge becomes like steep, like starts becoming very steep to the point where it's like 90 degrees and we have to like overcome it, and people are falling. I never fall, but like it's like this. It's as if this is a reoccurring dream, probably my most recurring dream, the most vivid, where I'm either biking or honestly a lot of times I'm biking over the bridge, and I've slowly realized where this comes from. and you'll enjoy it. It's the bicycle road or the cycling road episode of the Pokemon anime.
Oh, okay.
That's literally what happens. It's a drawbridge, and it slowly opens up and becomes more steep, and they have to go over it and jump over the drawbridge. Do you remember that episode?
Yeah, vaguely, yeah. And so hang on, that's become like a weird dream,
and that has melded with my
child.
child. Okay, so I saw that episode at the same, when I was let's say 4, at the same time where I was. Let's say my parents would take us to Manhattan, for example. We're not driving over a bridge to Manhattan. We're usually taking the tunnel. But then you exit the tunnel, and all of a sudden, these huge buildings that are 90-degree angles, because that's what buildings are. Wow. I hope so, usually. And I melded that and also my memories of, crossing bridges. There's a lot of bridges in New York. Crossing huge bridges as a child, they're even bigger, and they're these monstrosities. It's almost like being on a colossal that starts moving.
That's wild.
So I do have that kind of fear. It's my megalophobia, honestly. It's not my fear of heights. It's my megalophobia that is.
I'll tell you what. The thing in my dreams that always, with the zero exception, means something bad is about to happen. Getting into an elevator. They
interesting. Yeah.
Almost always will fail, and even in the dreams where they don't fail and just drop to the floor, crushing me, they something bad will happen. Almost always. It's I'm almost convinced to the point that my dreams are trying to warn me that if I get into an elevator, I'm going to die. I definitely have a little anxiety about getting into elevators just because my dream experience of them are so bad.
I don't have an irrational fear of it, but I have what's it called? Intrusive thought of whenever I'm in an elevator that it's going to fall.
Yeah, it's going to fall. Yeah.
And I'm always okay, I have to jump at the last minute right before it lands. I'm always okay, that's my fail-safe. Just in case it just
all goes wrong.
Jump right before it lands. But how am I going to know that it's about to land? And it's probably going to crash, and even if I do not die by the fall, the entire elevator itself will crush. Will get crushed, and debris will fall on me, I assume, unless I'm wrong.
We go to some serious places with this podcast. Maybe this podcast is a nightmare, a bad dream, or maybe it's.
I've had so many dreams where they're just normal, and all of a sudden I wake up and I realize, no, this was fake.
Yeah.
There were a lot of times. It's here's how a lot of my
wake up, Ron.
I hate that.
Wake up,
even though
Ron.
It's not a fear that I have. That is a scary thought, that.
But Ron, wake up.
I hate that.
You're not on a podcast right now. We're trying.
A lot of my dreams end, or the last act of my dream is I'm in big trouble, huge trouble. How am I going to deal with this trouble? And then I wake up and I'm I have to deal with it. And then I realize, wow, that was all fake. Thank God. It's not a monster chasing me or anything. It's no, I'm in huge trouble, dude.
That was the worst plot twist ever. I'm in huge trouble. How am I going to get out of this one? Wakes up. Oh, that's how I'm going to get out of this one.
Exactly. Maybe that has to do with fear of being canceled, for example, that every YouTuber has.
Do you know what? This was my dream last night. I had a dream last night where some very naughty images of myself that don't exist, by the way, found their way out to the world, and everyone was angry about it on the internet. Maybe this had come from because Phoebe had been telling me about all the stuff going on with the Try Guys or something. I don't really follow. I don't know anything about it. You know me. I don't know pop culture. But anyway, I was dreaming about this, and everyone was angry with me, and I was but in my dream, because I've been doing so much therapy lately, I was well, at least now I can finally live my organic, free self. And there's a level of relief. It was anxiety and then relief. And then I woke up and I was But then I was oh wait, I don't have any naughty images. Okay. And that was it.
Yeah, sometimes there is a bittersweet thing where it's in my dream, how do I resolve this? And then I come up with an idea. I'm okay, this is going to work. And then I wake up and I'm but I really wanted to implement that plan.
I really wanted to see how that went, if that went well. Yeah. How that would have gone. This podcast is a dream. It's a dream to be here with you.
No, it's a reality.
But I'm saying nice things about it because I love you and I love the podcast. So you're not going to say it back?